Here in Egypt, we are joined today by Mr. Samir Abbass. He is an Egyptologist. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Abbass. Always a pleasure to have you with us. So, talk to us about this award, and we understand that it is a strong trend now globally, achieving sustainable development goals in the most important touristic destinations, and Aswan is definitely one of the most important tourist destinations globally. So a success story for Aswan. Talk to us about also the global trend of the importance of achieving sustainable development goals in major tourist cities.
So, good morning. First of all, I'm not surprised for choosing Aswan. Myself, if I would choose among the whole cities, not only in Egypt, maybe all over Africa, to apply sustainable development goals, Aswan will be the first choice for me. Because in Aswan, that's where history, culture, and beauty come together. And there is no other place in Egypt which is all of these three elements come together in harmony like in Aswan. When you think about history, some of the most important and oldest historical and most attractive historical attractions in Aswan. When it comes to the beauty, that's always what I tell my friends, that the Nile River comes to its most beauty in Aswan. I have been to Uganda, I have been to Rwanda, I have been to Ethiopia. So seeing the Nile tributaries and all of these
countries. The color there is amazing.
In Sudan as well. So honestly, having seen the Nile comes to its most beauty in any place more than in Aswan. So when it comes to the culture, so you have a very unique culture. You have the Nubian culture, which is unfortunately is getting extinct gradually now, but is still very well almost preserved in some of the islands in Aswan, like in Elephantine Islands and some Sohail and other islands as well. And that's also another highlight, not only in Egypt, because in the Nile Basin in general as well. So it's a very good choice.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Samir, Aswan developed a strategy that integrates a variety of projects, including gardening and water conservation programs in schools, as well as diverse entrepreneurial training opportunities for all groups of the society. So, tell me, how did this that happen, and this strategy and its importance?
So, can I answer this question with a story?
Yes.
Please. So that's a success story which is already happening there in Aswan. And there is a foreigner, he's American and I know him, and he decided to go and live in one of the islands in Aswan. And what he did is he started a small farm, and this small farm he's farming fish in tanks, and he's using the side products of these fish to irrigate his farms with the natural fertilizers, and using this cycle he managed to grow food without fertilizers, without chemical fertilizers, organic food, and a very good quality of fish. And the Nubians themselves, which is they go for fishing, now they go and buy the fish from him. That will fit perfectly in the sustainable development goals. So another story of another friend, he is also foreigners working in international school. He sent me a message a few months ago telling me that I would like you to find a piece of land for me in one of the islands in Aswan. I would like to farm there, build a house overlooking the Nile River, and build a shrine for Osiris, which is his favorite god, the ancient Egyptian god Osiris, and live there for the rest of my life. As I mentioned earlier, that is the best place when you think about sustainable development goals. And that is a very, very strong trend today. And I'm very glad that the Ministry of Tourism, the current Minister of Tourism, Rania, she picked that and she focused on that in her developments, the tourism in Egypt. So maybe she's still busy in putting the infrastructures and regulations for that, but Egypt will be a very good, actually, very good example or a very good place to apply these sustainable developments. To make it easier for people to explain what is sustainable developments, it means is when you create tourism, and this tourism is not only for people who comes to visit the history and the temples, which is very important, but also together with that to understand the culture, to preserve the environments. I will give you an example. So there is one of the most common way of traveling along the Nile River today is using the regular cruise, big cruises, which can take like 200 or 300 people on board, or even some of the cruises can take even more. And they have very big engines, and they sail the Nile River between Luxor and Aswan. So I used to use them, until like 7 years ago, when I realized that how much they pollute the Nile River. I know that there is measures, regulations has been added. By the end, you are talking about a huge machine operated by diesel. It should pollute. Whatever you take any procedures to make sure that the pollution will be less, it's still polluting. So, and that's why I shifted to another type of boat, which is called dahabiyya, which is a sailboat. Takes less number of people, but the sailing is much better experience, is much more enjoyable for people. They enjoy the water, they enjoy the villages, they enjoy the sights as well, and they don't pollute the Nile River as much as the cruises did. And the good news is these type of tours start being picked only in the last year or last 2 years by newspapers. There is an article published recently in New York Times about the dahabiyya tours, and a few months ago another article has been published, and that's gradually increased the awareness of that. That's an example of how we can, the practical example of how we can apply sustainable development goals in preserving the nature and environment in Egypt. Another thing as well, which is to bring people and to introduce the culture of Egypt, not only the monuments. And again, we'll come back to the dahabiyya, which is a very good example of that, because when you sail on the Nile using this type of boats, so dahabiyya is a type of boat, by the way, not a name, it is a type of boat. When you sail the Nile River, so you don't only stop at the famous historical attractions along the Nile River like Aswan, Komombo. No, you stop also on islands. You do bird watching, you visit local people's houses, villages, which is for many people now they are even more interested and they like it even more than the historical.
Yeah, it's a global trend as well,
Exactly.
people to people tourism. Now,
this is the exact word which is actually Rania used, people to people, in order to promote for sustainable development goals in Egypt.
Mr. Abbass, having a female tourism minister in Dr. Al-Mashat, I guess also part of the Shireen, the sustainable development goals that have been achieved in Aswan concerns girls, young education for girls and the empowerment of women. So talk to us about that. I'm sure you have success stories.
One of the reasons why Aswan has been chosen, because the percentage of the girls going for schools in Aswan. That's one of the reasons why UNESCO choose Aswan. So another reason as well, there is 20 schools in Aswan, which is the applying sustainable development goals. And they declared that, like in preserving waters and protecting the environments and putting plants and gardens and cleaning around. And that is the main reason why Aswan has been chosen. So I think that we should use that in order to start promoting for Aswan. Since the article and award is already attracting attention to Aswan, I think that there is many other things which we can do, which is I can share some of these ideas with you. Go to Aswan to sail the Nile. There is a beautiful sailboat called, actually now there is easier and faster, the number of the motorboats is increasing compared to the sailboat, like a long time.
Youth like it. Yeah,
exactly.
Like
so and it's, by the way, it's mostly operated by very young, like teens, and we need to find a way to give more incentives for using more sailboats versus the engine boats.
Environment friendly.
Exactly, environment friendly. I think that there is the best place actually to apply something like that will be in the ferry or in the ferries between Aswan and Philae Temple. So this ferry lies on the other side of Aswan Old Dam, that will be in the southern side of Aswan Old Dam. There is hundreds of motorboats, which is all run by the Nubian people, which is living in the villages nearby. And they charge people for taking them to the temples and back. And that is all organized, very well organized. So what I'm thinking is designing new boats, and that should be encouraged by the government. It should be giving the incentive and giving the funding and even putting that in installments in the long term. So investments, I mean. So you designing a solar panel boat with sail to take the people to the temple and back. So in one direction you can sail, in the other direction you can use the solar panels and the engine operated by solar panels. Why I choose this area in particular? Because in this area is the lowest current in the water when it comes to Aswan. The current of the water is very strong, and when you sail against the currents is very, very difficult, unless there is a very strong wind and you have the sail on, which is not happens all the time. But using in this particular area, because of the dam, It is almost like a small lake, and that's the current is low. And I think that there is enough technology today to design engines and solar panels to operate a boat like this one. If this project was applied in this area, and from my understanding that it's easy or can be enforced in this area, to be more specific, can be enforced because it's organized through only one community. And in this case, that will give a very good example to apply that to the rest of Aswan and many other cities as well.
Wonderful.
So another reason why Aswan has been chosen is because of there is a specific schools in Aswan for fishing in Lake Nasser, teaching fishermen how to properly fish without overfishing and catching the small fish to preserve the population of the fish in Lake Nasser and Aswan. And also there is a specific schools specialized in teaching people technicians how to design and how to maintain solar panels.
Yes, Mr. Samir, I'm talking also about Aswan as a place for conferences, as we are expecting an important conference on development to take place in Aswan in the coming days. So how do you see Aswan as a place for conference tourism?
I understand it's also the capital of Arab culture,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, of the African
yes.
culture. African culture. So, of course, that is a brilliant
Like
choice.
Sharm el-Sheikh and
Exactly.
yes.
So it is a brilliant choice. That will attract the attention to Aswan. So Aswan population is like 500,000, which is not that big population, and the size of the city itself is small compared to the size of the extended borders of the city.
Yes.
And we should be very wise in how to attract people to Aswan, because we need to keep the balance between preserving what we have versus destroying what we have. There is some bad examples happens in some of the Red Sea resorts, without mentioning the names. There was people which used to come and dive 20 years ago and go and dive today, so they found that the corals has been deteriorated because there was wrong practice in diving, and which is now is being fixed, but it took 20 years for the damage to mix. And that's why we should learn from this experience and make sure that things will be done properly without running the resources we have. So if we talk about the prescriptions of how we can apply that, I talked about encouraging the sailboats, including the Dahabiya or the Fluka tours, designing a solar panel boats, to run Aswan. And also there is another project which is I wish we can be done in the next 10 years, cultural museum. There is a beautiful museum in Aswan called the Nubian Museum, which is one of the best museums in the whole world. And this museum tells the history of a long-lasting culture, which is unfortunately this culture is not the Nubian culture, now gradually is declining. So this museum is focused mainly on the history and archaeology of Nubia, with a very small part about the culture. I think that is the time to promote for a culture museum before it became very late. And the best location for this museum will be Elephantine Island. There is still enough place, and Elephantine Island, that is beginning of the history of Aswan, and that is still having a very significant Nubian community today. A project like that, I think that will help in preserving this culture, because between Egypt and Sudan, I haven't seen a project so far which is keen to preserve and document this unique culture.
Now, Mr. Abbass, as we are fastly approaching winter time, I guess Aswan in the winter is even more and more beautiful.
Yes.
Perfect weather, perfect sun. Talk to us about your recommendations when we go there, the locals or for the foreigners who intend to go there.
First of all, don't go and stay in European style hotels. Okay, so go and stay in one of the islands, in some of the small boutique hotels built by Nubians in a Nubian style, and having a good view overlooking the Nile River. That's how you can support sustainable development goals as well.
And enjoy more.
And enjoy more as well, and live within the culture, so you can enjoy the nature. And you will be very welcome with the very hospitable Nubians, and you will not far away from history too. So another thing which is I would like to shed light on it. So everything needs incentives. We are all need incentives, and the incentives to Aswan or in Egypt in general, to work in sustainable development goals is rules and regulations. So there is a room for registering or encouraging small business by registering tour companies in Egypt. Only focus on sustainable developments, since that is already the door of applying and registering new companies is closed, but we can make an exception for those who will work in sustainable development goals to register them, and that will be the incentives to move that forward.
So finally, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Samir Abbass, Egyptologist. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. So